Hi, I'm Jonah Essers with the Tummy Handbook. Welcome back to my series of videos on food allergies in infants and toddlers. We've already covered a wide array of topics such as terminology, signs and symptoms, when to get allergy testing, how to troubleshoot breastfeeding and formula feeding, how strict to be with the diet, when to introduce solids in your infant. In this particular video, we're going to discuss how and when to consider reintroducing a food that your child is allergic to. So at this point, you're sitting pretty. Your child, if it feels great, you know what foods he or she is allergic to. And now the question is, can you consider reintroducing it? Let's break it down. For kids with an IgE type of food allergy, this is your classic food allergy that happens over minutes to a couple hours from exposure, often with hives, tongue tingling, throat swelling, anaphylaxis, or shock. For these types of reactions, you really need to consult a board-certified allergist. You probably will need repeat allergy testing to know if you're even a candidate to reintroduce that food. And if you are, often they'll have you start with just trace amounts of that protein or that food protein baked into another food. Potentially, they'll recommend a challenge in the office where they have you ingest that food and monitor you for a period of time. So for IgE type of reactions, please consult an allergist before reintroducing that food. Now for non-IgE type of reactions, these are usually delayed in onset from a few hours to a few days of repeated exposure, often with milder symptoms like eczema, blood or mucus in the stool, increased spit-ups or vomiting or tummy pain. For these types of reactions, in the infants that had very early onset of their allergy, I often recommend trying to reintroduce somewhere between the 6 to 10 month mark of life. That's usually around the time that the immune system starts to develop tolerance, where it loses its overreactivity to that food protein. In my practice, I tend to aim closer to the 10-month mark because what's the rush? If you're too early to that experiment and there's a reaction, usually nobody's happy. For the older child, for the toddler that had a later onset of their food allergies, usually I recommend taking about a year off of that food before considering reintroduction. Now, for both of these age groups, if you notice that the reactions start to develop again, then obviously you want to pull back from that food. And then I usually recommend re-exposure somewhere every 6 to 12 months to see if there's a reaction. Now, for kids that tend to have more on the severe side of a non-IgE reaction, so vomiting, lots of belly pain, they don't eat for a week, they lose weight, often families really don't want to expose so frequently. However, if the symptoms are mild, like a little couple patches of eczema or maybe some streaks of mucus in the stool, a little bit of belly pain. Usually families are a little bit more interested in trying those exposures a little bit more frequently. So now let's discuss some tips to how to reintroduce that food. Number one is please make sure you introduce only one new food at a time. That way you'll know which food is potentially causing a reaction if you see a reaction. Number two is make sure that you do each one of these trials for a period of 1 to 2 weeks. For delayed reactions, it's going to take some time before you know if your child is reacting. So make sure that you commit to a couple weeks to reintroduce that food and make sure that there is or is not a reaction. You want to give that food as a very clean food, so no additional additives or preservatives, which might muddy the waters. You can mix that new allergy food into other foods that you know are safe if that would make it more palatable. Additionally, make sure that you give that food in very small amounts to start, and over several days you can increase the amount of food protein that you give that child as you feel more and more confident that you're not seeing a reaction. And lastly, be mindful of the texture. So if you have an 11-month-old that you're reintroducing peanuts to, you certainly don't want to give them fresh, hot roasted peanuts from the ballpark because they're not going to be able to chew that. Give them peanut butter or peanut oil or peanut powder mixed into another food. So be mindful of the age-appropriate texture that you need when giving that food reintroduction. So in summary, for IgE type of reactions, please consult a board-certified allergist before reintroducing. For non-IgE type of reactions, in your young infant, you can consider reintroduction somewhere between the 6 and 10 month mark. For older kids, like toddlers, take a year off and then consider reintroduction in 6 to 12 month increments. And lastly, make sure that you go slow with the food re-challenges. Make sure that you're giving one food at a time. Thanks for watching, and as always, If you have questions about this video or any of my videos, leave me a comment in the comment section below. You can check out my Instagram account at the link below. And again, thank you for watching.